until 1972, women were not allowed to run the Boston Marathon.
I thought the lesson today was crazy because women couldn't do something simple as opening up a credit card or bank account.
I wanted my kids to be the teachers, which is probably unheard of in special education because really we're driving regular education, which is kind of funky. We're gonna say you're gonna learn the anatomy, you're gonna learn the physiology, you're gonna learn all the parts, and by the way, you're gonna go teach a random group of people.
Go, babes, go to your stations.
Tell them that your intelligence is a gift, but it's also responsibility. So besides just making a living, you should make a difference.
Slowly raise the block.
Did you think of your special burgers?
Mr. Joseph is very, very unique. He uses so many levels in the library, from the most foundational and basic skills of what you would think a library is, all the way into some very, very deep technology that would really surprise you.
Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Marie Bliston, the host of Classroom Close-Up New Jersey. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we'll bring you highlights from our school visits that focus on introducing young people to life-changing concepts and designs. Moving toward a future driven by technological advances, students of today have some unique opportunities. We'll see how educators are connecting young people to topics and tools that can give the world a helping hand. We begin with some perspective on gender equality.
Okay, today for Throwback Thursday, we're gonna do a little feminist activity. I start off with a trick question. I want you guys as groups to come up with 5 things. Identify 5 things that a woman can't do better than a man, or just a woman can't do. It could be professionally, it could be biologically. They bounced around every sort of idea because they really were thinking hard about it.
Build a house.
Build a house.
Being a contractor.
Yeah. Build houses.
Run faster. The world record for men's is more than a second faster than for women's.
A woman can do anything a man can. It's just not, a woman doesn't have that type of opportunity a man has.
That's right. A woman can do anything a man can do. And that's what history teacher Nicholas Ferroni is trying to instill in his students.
We do live in a society that instills certain gender norms or gender roles and gives the impression that guys could do something better than women. Not in fact they can, just women weren't allowed to do it for the longest time or aren't allowed to do it. Next question.
His lessons go way beyond the textbook. And there's a reason for that.
I feel like our textbooks indirectly teach sexism, racism, and prejudice, because we give the impression that white Christian males did everything and that women, minorities, and certain religions were side notes. First question, up until 1978, women could be fired from their job for being tall, divorced, pregnant, or married. We cover the suffrage movement, the women's rights movement, women's lib. Reveal your answers. Divorced, pregnant. Women were fired for being pregnant.
The one that shocked me the most was where women will get fired if they are pregnant, because they think that we can't do anything like as good as we can because we are pregnant.
I mean, I also think pregnant because then she can't work as well as she would if she wasn't pregnant.
When he asked about those 5 questions, I automatically thought that women can do anything. There's nothing that women can't do.
All right, so 5 things, like can women play football better than men? Can women be president better than men?
Most of those things happened no more than 30 years ago, and my parents are only just slightly older than that.
Own a house.
That surprised me the most. I thought it would be like more like 100 years ago, but no, not even a generation past.
Up until 1972, women were not allowed to run the Boston Marathon. All right?
I thought the lesson today was crazy because women couldn't do something simple as opening up a credit card or bank account. Women couldn't run a Boston Marathon.
So Kathryn Switzer, she was a Syracuse track runner. She decided to enlist in the Boston Marathon in 1967. She had to enlist with her initials so that way they didn't know she was a woman. She didn't think it was a big deal.
I think that the Boston runner woman was so brave and she was so powerful, and she just took it as if it was nothing. That's what really stood out to me, that she didn't care who thought what about her, and even if the man was chasing after her and running and grabbing her and telling her that she shouldn't be here, she still kept running and she still kept going, and she finished the race at 4 hours, and she did it.
I think it's imperative that they get a good perspective on things, and they'll appreciate what they have now when they know that people sacrifice for them to have it, whether it's within their family or someone in a historical figure. This is in the not too distant past. What women were.
Mr. Ferroni's lessons in the classroom sparked an interest in one of his students. She wanted to continue his discussions after school, so she created the Feminist Club.
Being socially aware, advocating what you believe in is so important, especially as teens. So I created a Feminist Club to give people a chance to learn about social and world issues, to come together and make a difference in society. So the topic today is gender roles and stereotypes. So what are gender roles?
I'm one of the advisors of the Feminist Club. It's not my club. One of our seniors wanted to start it last year. And it was, I mean, it's necessary. And it's funny because we got a little backlash initially because, again, people hear the word feminist, it might as well hear the word sexist, you know, as if it's man-hating club, which it's the complete opposite. It's more of the empowerment club. And I would say I'm in there with some of the most incredible young ladies our school has who only want to change things and empower each other.
The glass ceiling has yet to be broken, so we don't have equal pay.
I researched the movement and researched what it was standing for and what it was fighting against. And I just learned about rape culture. I learned about how poorly women were treated.
The Feminist Club is about being a feminist and being allowed to speak your heart and speak your mind and not being shamed for it.
I think she wanted me to grow up thinking that I don't need to be pretty, I don't need to do makeup, I don't need to do all this kind of thing. I just need to know what's in my mind and learn how to build from what I have and be greater than just a pretty face.
Women have a lot more to offer than just who they're wearing or how they present themselves. We are people, we have thoughts, we have ambitions.
She's an amazing young lady who's gonna change the impact and I would say the social climate of our school for the better.
Women are strong. Women have the ability to do anything we choose to, but we don't have the opportunity to do so. So I think women need to stand up and just go out there and do whatever they want to do. How do you guys feel about that?
I would like to see women take over one day.
Raising awareness on this issue is a step toward understanding the impact and ultimately moving the world in a positive direction. Through teamwork and tenacity, a new generation is preparing to give the world a helping hand.
Assembling these prosthetic hands is one part of a multi-layered science project that has at-risk students taking the lead in the classroom.
The project is called Give the World a Helping Hand, and the purpose is really to make a difference both for our students here at Southern Regional High School, as well as to create a 3D printed prosthetic hands that will go around the world to various recipients that don't have fingers. Okay, if you don't pull them tight, you're going to loosen up. Check it again. Quality control. Is it good? Yep. The 3D printed hands that we're doing, they must have their wrist rotation, but they have no fingers.
So we have these two pieces, and we have like Velcro that straps their hand in right here, and when they bend like the wrist, it grabs them, grabs anything that they want.
These are the ones that all the students in all the classes have made with just a bigger size of it.
The Raptor Reloaded, which is the print that we're doing for the 3D printed prosthetics, is composed of 31 total parts, and then of those total parts, there's 11 separate parts.
Krupp funded her project through a grant from the NJEA HIP Foundation.
So we wrote the grant for $10,000. We received the full amount, fully funded. With that, we got 2 3D printers. One is in my classroom, and then one is in Mrs. Hughes' classroom. And then we also got all the filament we needed and the hardware, as well as the materials to assemble the hands.
We hooked all the joints together, hooked the thumb and the fingers and everything together. And today we are taking these strings, like making it so the fingers like bend and so they'll be able to like grasp stuff and pick it up.
All of us were kind of surprised and really excited when she told us about it because it's something new and a lot of people don't get to do this. Even like college kids, like they're just starting to get their hands on 3D printers, so it's really cool.
So this is the TASBot. This is our biggest, best 3D printer, and it kind of pairs up with the computer, and you have a CAD program on the computer you can go through and create just about anything. And it uses the filament, which is just hard plastic on this roll. As it feeds it through, it heats it up, so when it goes down to the base, it can basically draw with it, so that when it starts printing, it goes layer by layer all the way up, and as it builds up slowly to the top, you get the entire object or shape, whatever you're building.
So 3D printing normally happens in a high-end academic class or in a CAD class. So you might see this in a computer design course where they're going to be the next engineer. And yet I teach sophomores life science, which is a small group setting. So aptitudes are a little bit different and how our brains work are a little bit different. So we had to kind of mold that into a whole different experience than what you would say, open up your textbook and define these key terms.
The hole that you're going through on here, that wedge of knots should all fit in there.
That different experience included having her students collaborate with fellow teacher Irene Hughes' anatomy and physiology class.
My students and her students typically would not work together, and this was an opportunity to have two populations come together, and they helped each other.
Yeah, the proximal. Yeah, it's only the proximal that's tight, right?
I wanted my kids to be the teachers, which is probably unheard of in special education because really we're driving regular education, which is kind of funky. We're going to say you're going to learn the anatomy, you're going to learn the physiology, you're going to learn all the parts, and you need to know all the 3D printed parts. And also, by the way, because I'm crazy, by the way, you're going to go teach a random group of people.
I forget how many knots I just
That's 3.
So before we even started 3D printing, we had to talk about how do we assemble not just the hands, but how do we take a group of population that's not normally as easy to say, hey, let's throw you in a class of 30 other kids. And that started with just doing presentations on the first day. And the kids looked at me like, she is crazy. So the presentations led to self-confidence, being okay in front of random people they've never met. And then the next day, we took this hula hoop activity, and that hula hoop activity was really about team building and getting them used to kind of uncomfortable situations to make them successful when they go to a random class where they do not know one person.
While Krupp's students honed their problem-solving and interpersonal skills, all of the students worked to build over 50 prosthetics that will eventually be delivered to recipients. They also developed a deeper understanding of the project's significance through an empathy exercise.
The one person actually had to tape their hand around like this with a fist and had to do everyday things. So tying a shoe was one, changing a diaper was another one, and they were actually quite difficult for the people who had the limbs tied up.
It's teaching them not only to recognize that when someone needs help from science, it's giving them the opportunity and a tool to help the person. And that's true empathy, because they're learning how to help the person. They're not simply just living in their shoes. They're not just studying what's wrong. They're combining all of that to do something to help people.
For Krupp, the project has been a way to give her students access to technology and high-level content, while also building life skills.
Is kind of blending everything together. So it's not just science, not just technology, but it's about how you think. It's about, okay, let's look at science and how can we take the curriculum and really bring it up to the next level. So affording them this opportunity is incredible. I think it's probably will be, for years to come, some of the best thing they've ever seen in their entire education. So it's been really rewarding and exciting, and just that their energy is so super high, my job is complete. So I'm super happy about that.
We understand there are plans to sustain the project through future grants and crowdsourcing to help purchase additional items, such as materials for the 3D printers. We wish all the best to everyone involved. And now more science for the future. Take a look.
Well, class, today what we're going to do is give a brief explanation of some of the research projects you have done and will do in this class this year. Are there any questions before we get started?
Go, babes, go to your stations.
Material science is one of the newer branches of engineering. Basically, it's called the study of stuff. Due to advances in magnification, we now can see what's going on in a material at the molecular or atomic model. And because of that, it gave birth to a whole new branch of engineering where you study what happens in a material in certain conditions.
Slowly raise the block until you see that the shoe starts to slide. To find static friction, we place the shoe on a block that would elevate at an angle, and when the shoe would start to slide, we would stop it and mark that angle, and then when you take the tangent of that angle, that would be your coefficient of static friction.
To find the coefficient of sliding friction, you take the spring scale and attach it to the shoe. Then you slide it across the surface, and that is your force of sliding friction.
What these two experiments would show us is that how good each shoe is and how much grip it has for walking, sports, just everyday, running, all different uses.
The other group was testing out the shock absorbency, if you would, of a material. It's called elasticity. And the mechanical engineering term for that is Young's modulus.
And the first step, we have to take out the core of this sneaker.
Now we have to put the core of the sneaker onto the laser lever, and after we do that, we put the top on.
You bounce a laser off of the mirror and it hits a ruler, and that gives you your first measurement, which is the original pressure being put on the object.
After we got to 25 pounds, we want to re-level it and figure out its final position.
You add weight to it and then do the same thing, and then you subtract the values.
So we found that our initial value was 7.8 centimeters and our final value was 8.4. So to find the displacement, you have to subtract the final value and the initial value, and you get 0.6. And then you take 25, which is the stress of the weight that we put on, and divide it by the displacement of 0.6. That's 41.6 repeating.
The higher the number, the better the Young's modulus, which means that the shoe will perform better and it can withstand more stress.
We focus on the properties and characteristics all materials have in general. And while we're doing this, each unit we find a problem-solving application that you could use with the knowledge. Why do you think it takes so long for water to be filtered through one of these filters?
Well, the holes are at the nano level, so it's going to be a slower process.
What we're trying to do is find a cheap water filtration system that would filter water in all types of environments at very minimal of any cost.
So these pots are made of clay and sawdust, and when you fire up the pot, the sawdust burns away, creating nano holes, which are basically very small holes.
When the clay's wet, you mix in a proportional amount of sawdust. 1 handful of sawdust to 1 handful of clay, or 2 sawdust to 1 clay, messing with the ratios to see which would be the most efficient. You fire it up in a kiln just like you would any other type of pot.
And it found that the holes it leaves does allow water to pass through, but the holes are too small to allow bacteria or germs to pass through. So water that normally could not be drinkable can now be drinkable.
It's nice to know this is doing some good out there with the filtering water, making sure people have access to it.
I believe we are one of the few high schools on the East Coast, if not the only high school in New Jersey, that has a standalone material science course.
Basically what we're doing is we're measuring creep. So what creep is if you have a material under a constant load, which is this weight in this instance, and you apply heat to it, it's how much longer it gets. We were working on the lab, the properties of a metal, strip of a tin and antimony alloy. As you heat something up, an atom cannot exist in the same space as another atom. So what they'll really do is they'll push out against each other, which causes the extension of the length of it. Well, in the real world, you can see thermal expansion, which creep is a form of that, in something like railroad tracks, where during the summertime, you would see the tracks expand, and that's why they leave the spaces between every single track, so that expands, it doesn't bend the track out of its way, so the train can flow over the track safely.
Previously, we had a measurement of roughly, I want to say 18 centimeters, and now we have about 24, so that's 6 centimeters of growth.
One of the projects was the wind belt project. A wind belt apparatus is a low-cost, sustainable energy generating machine.
We're testing the displacement of different materials used in this wind belt. The material, which was Mylar, we just put the fan on the highest and just let it vibrate.
The objective is to find the material that's most flexible and has the most displacement, so that in a real life situation, it'll take the oscillation and the movement that it does and turn it into electricity. And
Mr. Ganji's goal is for us to learn and put that learning into use.
Well, you measured displacement and you measured stress. And I tell them that your intelligence is a gift, but it's also responsibility. So besides just making a living, you should make a difference. So take the knowledge you learn and see if there's an application to it that can help out society as a whole, besides just helping out, say, your bottom line.
We're feminists and you're watching Classroom Close-Up.
Imagine a place where books come to life, where students create their own digital books, where writing code is commonplace, where dress-up is part of the lesson plan, and where reading in a treehouse is the norm. That place does exist at the Walnut Ridge Primary School, and it's Benjamin Joseph's library.
This is so much more than just a library. It's a media center filled with all kinds of digital learning, GoPro, iPads, apps, websites. Are there other things that you'd like to research?
Mr. Joseph is very, very unique.
Did you think of your special burgers? Yeah. What do you think I like extra of?
He uses so many levels in the library, from the most foundational and basic skills of what you would think a library is.
Perhaps you'll see a swishing tail, huge footprints, or a beak.
All the way into some very, very deep technology that would really surprise you.
We can make the music by coding and programming the robot. Isn't that cool?
I call him our cybrary man.
Raina, come on over. You can work with Chloe over here. The cybrarian is the teacher that is innovative with the new technology. It's finding what technology a 5-year-old can experience in their hand in order to find this digital world of research and learning more about things. Augmented reality has been a lot of fun for me to learn about. It's working off the basic technology of QR codes. When you hold your device over a QR code, it loads you over to a website. I'll load it for you because it needs to be a little bit high. It loads a 3D image right on top of the iPad. So students can manipulate the spacecraft 3D, and they can look at satellites, and they can look at the Mars rover. That I can do. Hey, Lucas, can you come over and let's do this together. Are you ready? Can you press that button right there? We can even turn the wheels. I was thinking about how the iPads were used last year, and the students just went to games. And that is the type of screen time that I think that parents, teachers, and a lot of people worry about in today's world. So I really worked it in less of this idea of screen time and more of where can we use technology to have students exploring problems, talking with each other, and seeing the technology as a resource in their life, not just something to keep them busy. You guys are in Some Dog, and you guys are in Mystery Word Town? Yeah. So Mystery Word Town and Some Dog are great apps for students to practice math skills. It's a great way of students to learn how to work collaboratively in a social context on the internet. What the students have learned to do with Some Dog is they can actually play games interactively together from device to device.
When Trevor is done signing in, then he has to go and play World and hit play class, and then we could go on the same thing, and then we could play each other.
It's really neat to see them setting up collaborative learning experiences.
Okay, wait, we're both playing.
I do focus on 3 main C's in my library. I focus on collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. I love that you guys are doing Wixie here. Wixie is a great app for doing online writing. It's a tool that we purchased for our kindergartners and first graders to learn how to add their own pictures into a text, as well as search for clip art, and also add text boxes. So it's this great idea of this digital learning format, but also their way of expressing themselves as writers. You know you can make that bigger, right? There you go. Good work, Emma.
They become self-directed learners without even realizing it, and they begin to almost teach themselves skills and concepts that maybe they didn't know they had, but through Mr. Joseph's Media Center, through some general lessons and some lessons that are deeper, the students really are finding their way to what is it that they like, what is their spark.
So friends, you've done a great job heading off to your stations today using your iPads. We had some people using Puppet EDU and turning our books into online digital formatting. Nice job. That's one of my favorites. What I really want the kids to be able to be is independent learners in this 21st century. And yes, they need to read to do so. Having your own little place to read is just close to my heart. I was a struggling reader. Tough words, complex words were tough for me, and also comprehension. And I never truly saw myself as a reader until I felt like a reader. Feeling like a reader at this age is being a reader. So being brave to read the pictures and being brave to open up that book and try. And inventive storytelling is the best part of reading. It's when we can take a student without any filters or any different pieces of the outside world that they have ever had a chance to experience, and they're going to give you exactly what they see that picture telling them. I think that's great reading.
Did you find it already?
My goal for these kids is to leave this space with a love of reading and a passion for learning.
Good work today.
That was easy.
An admirable goal and a pretty awesome space. Sharing that passion for learning is what drives Mr. Joseph and all the educators we met today. When we first went on the air more than 2 decades ago, how many of our viewers imagined printing a prosthetic hand? So keep watching as a new generation of young people equipped with the tools, curiosity, and inspiration we've seen today take their next steps into a future of limitless potential. You can keep an eye on their journey right here every week. There's lots more to see on classroomcloseup.org and on our Facebook page. Next week, we'll bring you 4 more stories from our public schools, including a journey through the Peace Zone. Until then, for Classroom Close-Up New Jersey, I'm Marie Bliston. See you soon.
That type of opportunity a man has. With just a bigger size of it.
Huge footprints or a beak.